And we're back. So we are starting out with removing our valves out of the cylinder head. This is probably the worst one. You can clearly see that is super bent. We're gonna be replacing all of them, intake and exhaust, because they all made contact with something at some point, and I'm not risking it. You may as well replace them all. It's pretty good insurance. So I already took a couple of them out, obviously, and this is how I'm doing it. This is the valve spring compressor I just happen to have. It's probably not the right valve spring compressor for this particular head, but I'm making it work anyway. This is what I got. I got this copper pipe. I've cut a notch out in it, so you can see I just depress the spring like that. Then I can get in here with my magnet like that and pull the retainers out. Pretty simple. So there's one, and I like to come out one at a time. And there we go. So now that the retainer is out, I just back this thing off. It's not too bad. So I back that off. The spring just falls out. And collecting my springs over here. And there's our valve. And you just give it a little push. Boop. And away they go. Just like that. We now have all of the valves out, as well as all the springs and retainers and all that good happy stuff. Now we got to remove the valve stem seals. You grab a hold of it like this. Now, just keep in mind when you're doing this, don't pry or use any of these surfaces as leverage. All of these machine surfaces, especially where the cams go, and these down here where they were all machined, you don't want to scratch any of those surfaces or mar any of that up, so be careful. So you're going to grab it like this, give it some twist, and pull and twist at the same time. There you go. They're on there pretty good. So just take your time and try not to damage anything. And then I'm going to clean the whole head. I'm going to degrease the whole thing, and as well as the bottom side. And we're just going to scrub this thing clean. I'm going to clean up this grossness. Get this thing all nice and shiny. Going to use some solvent, some scraping, some Scotch-Brite pad. We're going to clean up that deck so we can throw our cylinder head on there, as well as come down here along this surface where all those T30 bolts were. We're going to scrape all that silicone off of there. That should come off real easy. All right, we're ready to lap the valves, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to put my little compound on here like so. Make sure you don't get any of that compound on the shaft. You do not want the grinding compound to get between here and the valve guide. It will destroy it. Get a little bit of oil, grease this up nice and greasy. Stick it in the hole. And lap away. Get your little plunger tool. Yeah. I think the water makes it worse. We're gonna pull it out. We're gonna get all that compound out of there. Wipe it clean. Just to inspect it, I just wiped it. I got this dirty rag. I'm gonna wipe it clean. It looks good. Make sure that it's all nice and even, as well as here. So I think that's gonna be good. That's my second pass on this one, so I'm gonna get some solvent and make sure I clean this valve really well, as as the seat, and make sure you mark it. I had a mark on here, the number 8, letting me know that this is for the 8th valve over from the timing chain. So this is cylinder 4. intake valve number 2, so I just marked it number 8. So I'm going to do that to all of the intake valves and the exhaust valves, and then we'll be back to put them in. All right, we got all of our valves lapped, and we're ready to put them in. So we're just going to grab our new valves. They're all clean. Put a little bit of oil on the shaft. Get it all nice and greased up. Never have too much oil on here. Drop them in the hole. Just like that. All right, now we have all of our valves in and where they go. They're all numbered, so we got them in their place and they're all seated down. I'm going to take some painter's tape and I'm going to tape over them like this so that they don't fall out because there's nothing holding them in there. And then we're going to flip this guy over real gentle. Like this, and then we're going to set this thing straight down, just like that. Now I've got it flipped over. I've just got it propped up here. I'm going to take these little straws that come with your valve stem seals. You're going to slide it over the stem like so. What that does is it allows the seal to slide over it and not hit the ribs of this valve that the retainer goes in, so it doesn't damage it. So then, I can't really do this with two hands. Put your valve seal over like that, and you get your 10 mil socket. In this case, it's a 10 mil, and you put it over here, and we're going to push that seal down. At the same time, I'm going to hold the valve with my hand underneath here, so I'm not pushing it against the table. Take it, and you push like that. Give it good taps. Make sure it's down there. Pull the straw out. You can take the valve probably and pull up on it. Make sure it's not stuck. There you go. That one's done. I do that to all of them, all the way around. Got it flipped back up. All our valves are in. All our seals are in. Make sure that they move in and out freely. They're not sticking or stuck. It's time to put our valve springs back in. Okay, we've got our valve spring compressor in here with my piece of copper pipe. Don't judge me. I mean, this is going to be finicky. I got a screwdriver that's magnetic, like this. A little screwdriver, a little magnetic guy like this. A little pick tool. It's a delicate operation. I go ahead and compress this spring a little bit more. Oh, there it goes. Just clicked into place. I'm gonna rotate it around like that. Get them on the back side. There it is. Slowly let the spring off. There it is. So I got to do that to every single one of these, all 16 of them. So it's going to take a while, but looks good. All right, our head is rebuilt and cleaned. Make sure you clean this deck off perfectly. I'm going to show you what we got to do with the timing chains on the balance shafts, and we'll be ready to put this head on. This is what the lower timing chain should look like. You have a colored link here lined up with that arrow in that position. You have a notch up there. You can see that lined up with that dark link. And then we have a little dot on this sprocket that you can't see. Right there, it's a little indent lined up with that dark link. It should all look like this. And the engine should be at top dead center on cylinder 1. So everything should look flush on the top, and all the chains should be on those marks on the bottom. If you're replacing that chain, you can replace it by taking this tensioner off out of the back of the block, and all these tensioner guides with those, what was that? That triple square, I think it's like an M12 or something. Those are all torqued to 20 Newton meters. With clean hands or gloves, open this head gasket and we'll put it on there. A lot of cars will have head gaskets that can be put on upside down, but in our case, it's got this little jog in here, which means the head gasket only goes on one way, like this. If you were to put it on upside down, that jog would be sticking out back there, and it wouldn't make any sense, and it actually wouldn't fit. So this only goes on one way, so I'll peel this off after the two decks are clean, slap that on there, and then we'll throw the head immediately on before we get any dirt or dust knocked on it. Also, another tip, make sure, it's very important actually, that you blow out all of these cylinder head bolt holes out with compressed air, because there'll be oil sitting in the bottom of them, and you don't want to hydrolock those bolts, including these. These don't drain out the bottom. This hole doesn't come out. So you got to blow all these holes out with compressed air, as well as all the ones on that lower timing cover, to get all the oil or coolant or anything that has fallen down in there. You want to blow all those out nice and clean before you put this on. There we are with our new cylinder head gasket. Make sure you inspect it, that there's no kinks, bends, scratches, or anything in this gray surface. This is our sealing surface. You want to make sure that that thing is absolutely mint. They usually are if they're high quality. So this one looks perfect. So we're going to go ahead and throw that cylinder head on here. This is kind of tricky to do by yourself because of that turbocharger. You gotta like push it. There it goes. We're going to torque these head bolts down. We're going to start in the middle and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on. We're going to torque them all down to 30 pounds, and then we're going to come back in that same order and turn them 90 degrees. All right, we've cranked all these an extra 90 degrees, and now you're going to go back again and do an additional 90 degrees, starting in the middle, working your way out. We are all torqued down. We're ready to start assembling this head in the car. So remember these lifters that we took out earlier? We're going to get some assembly lube. It's like sticky oil, thick stuff. And we're going to put it over the lifter portion of it. This little shaft here. We're going to inspect these one at a time as we're putting them in, making sure there's no flat spots or dings or like big gouges in the rollers. And we'll be able to grease them up and put them in the exact same order we took them out, which they're laying in the order I took them out in right here. So this side is for the intake side, and these are our exhaust side. So we're going to take this, and it goes to the far one, and you're just going to stick it down in this hole. I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes, but I got to pull it back out and put that assembly lube. And make sure it's not over here like this or over here, that it's sitting right in that little groove, and it's pushed all the way down just like that. You got to do that to all of them, and then we'll drop the cams in, and then we'll be ready to put that cam cradle on. Okay, everything's set. We're ready to drop our cams in there. I put some assembly lube in all these lower journals. Try not to get that stuff all over the place since this deck has to still stay dry and clean for when we put that cam cradle on. Let's drop these cams in there. These have been sitting here for a while, so I cleaned them off real nice so there's no dust and dirt on them. If they're a little dry, that's fine. Our assembly lube should take care of that. This longer one goes in the back. Now they're not going to sit very flat because they're trying to push the valves down, and so when we put that cam cradle on here, it'll straighten them out. Just make sure they're sitting, you know, even side to side, just like that. Okay, so these are set. We're ready to put our cam cradle / valve cover on. We have it right here. So you can see they have machined grooves in here that I had to hell of a time cleaning out because somebody used the wrong sealant the last time. You want to put a bead of sealant on every one of these grooves. You can see they've got them around the spark plug holes here and here, and there's a little trail that goes around here. It's basically telling you everywhere you have to put the sealant. It's anaerobic sealant. That means it doesn't dry. It's not silicone. People, don't use silicone on this. Okay, it should look like this. I put a little bit of assembly lube in each one of the channels where the cams go. I do like to put the sealant on this last one out here. Don't mistake it for that one because the cam doesn't actually go there. There's a cap. See how the cam comes short? There's this little rubber plastic kind of cap that goes in here. And technically it's supposed to seal itself, but you know, it can't hurt throwing this sticky stuff in there. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this on the car, and then we'll be able to take this guy and drop it in there. Now this is gonna be a little sticky, so you gotta bring it straight down. Not tightening those, we're just snugging them up so the thing sits flat. We will now torque all of these T30 bolts on the top of this cam cradle to 8 Newton meters, and then an additional 90 degrees. If you have to, get yourself a marker of some kind of marking tool, whether it be like white paint or something, and mark each bolt when you're done with it. That way you know you've done it already and you don't over torque it, because there's a lot of them, and so they're hard to keep track of which ones you did and which ones you didn't. Start from the center and work your way out. It's also very important to note that when you drop in these cams in here, before you tighten everything down, make sure that they're in the right position. You'll see this little brown mark. It's right next to that screw. You can see it on the face there. It needs to be pointed up at an angle towards the front of the car. And this one, there's actually a notch in it right there, and that should be pointed up towards the rear of the car. Make sure that they're not pointed down or 180 degrees out. They need to be pointed in that direction. So now that everything's torqued and they're ready to go, we can drop our timing chain in here. So let's do that, and then we'll put the guides on. Here's our brand new timing chain. Find the 2 colored links that are closest together. There's a third one down here, but you'll find 2 that are closest together. Those 2 colored links will go on the 2 marks on the tops of the camshaft. The one that's down here, there's a mark on the crankshaft sprocket, and I'll show you where that is. Next, you're going to drop your chain in here like this. Just let it hang down there. And you're going to get it's an 18 millimeter wrench over the slot in the back here on the intake camshaft, and a 19 millimeter or 3/4 wrench on the exhaust camshaft. You're going to get your special holder tools like this. The one on the right will go on the intake cam. The one on the left will go on the exhaust cam. Tool slid in here, and then once you set this where it's almost straight up and down this mark, you slide this one in there, and as you can see, we're off about 1 tooth on this mark. I'm gonna pull the tension off of it like so, and then we're going to pull this 1 more tooth, slide this guide back in there. There we go. Now we got our chains on the top, and we're gonna go check the bottom. We're still set on our colored link, so it's time to install our guides. We have our guides slipped in from the bottom. We're still on our mark down there. We're still on both of our marks down here. As you can see, there's quite a bit of slack still on the top end. That's okay. Once we release these holders, it'll all come out. But before we do that, we want to install this tensioner down here. Here is our brand new tensioner. We're going to use our tensioner bolts. Now that your tensioner is in there, torque to 9 Newton meters. You got to torque all of these triple square M12, I believe it is, the ones that hold all these guides on, to 20 Newton meters. Go ahead and remove these special tools. Then don't forget to come down here and put your new your oil pump chain tensioner on here. This gets torqued to 9 Newton meters as well. Now that you got all of your thing torqued down, all the guides in, recheck your marks. Make sure everything lines up where it's supposed to. All the colored links are where they are. Obviously the balance shaft chains are going to be moved around because I had to turn the engine over. I went ahead and threw that oil pump chain on there. That one doesn't have to be timed. Check all your marks, make sure it's good, and then you can pull this pin. There it is. It's all set, ready to go. Next, we're going to make sure that this surface is clean to put that lower cover back on. Make sure both surfaces are prepped for this lower timing cover. You got all this stuff nice and clean and degreased. You got the timing cover that looks like this. This is a bead of silicone, not the anaerobic sealant. You are supposed to do silicone on this. Make sure you put nice big goobs on the corners. And try to put this on as straight as possible. Got our lower cover on. Time to put our cam bridge. Go ahead and throw this on there. Alright, we got our cam bridge in there. Torque all these T30 bolts, including this one, to 9 Newton meters. Next, you're going to put this thing in here. This is a oil valve. Just remember, this one was reverse thread. Got it all torqued down. This variable valve timing special bolt here was torqued to 35 Newton meters or 25 foot-pounds. I'm going to install this motor mount bracket. Before we put this top motor mount bracket on and completely block our way, we're going to put this upper timing cover on here. I would recommend putting this on first before this bracket that I just did. It'll be easier to get to those two bottom screws, but fortunately they are a hex as well, so I'll be able to get in there with an open end wrench and tighten those up, but probably put this on first. So we're going to put this on, then that motor mount. We got all of our motor mounts, everything's torqued. I think the next thing we should probably do is put the turbocharger back on. Make sure you have your gasket back there. It's easier to put your gasket on before even putting the head on, but I ended up having to slip it back behind here. It's a lot harder to do, but I'd suggest putting the gasket on the head before even installing the head on the car to prevent from having to fight it, and you can't see it. So anyway, let's put that turbocharger on there. Remember to lift it up and over and then hook it down on those bottom brackets. We've got our turbocharger all tightened up, ready to go. Let's put this annoying piece back here. Like that somehow. We're going to get this out of the way first, and then we're going to come over here just in case we need some room to stick our hand back. Then we'll come over here and we'll put this secondary, I don't know what this is. It has something to do with emissions. It's like a secondary air injection pump. It puts fresh air into the exhaust. Put that right down there. And then we got this, which is our vacuum pump. I'm going to put that over the cam. Make sure you throw a new gasket on there. Comes in your kit. And then high pressure fuel pump. Got our screws for that. And that will bolt on right there. That one has an O-ring on it. Make sure you replace that as well. Let's get this business end of stuff wrapped up. Alright, we got this all set. Let's go ahead and put our CCV valve on. Goes this way. Don't forget to put your new gasket on there. that. Next, we can come over here, put our electromagnet back in. Make sure you put your brand new O-ring in there. Okay, we're almost ready to put our intake manifold back in, but I think it's a perfect opportunity to put this coolant pump back in first since we have all this extra room. Now, it looks like a real big mess right here, but it's really not that bad. So this goes in this way. Those two hoses will go around the engine that way. That hose gets hooked up in here, right? This goes in there kind of like that. I'll show you what it looks like on the bottom, so you put it back. Now, you'll be left with two sets of like wiring harness. There's this one. This is a big rat's nest. This hooks up to the bottom side of the intake manifold, so we'll worry about that once we get the intake in. And then there's this half, this big long loom with all the coil pack harnesses. This we can lay up here and lay it across there, because this is where it's going to end up going. And we'll get that all tucked in later, but now it's up out of our way. Let's put this secondary coolant pump in here, and then we'll be ready to put our intake manifold in. Once it's out, this is a good opportunity to clean it like I did. Mine's all nice and shiny. So you're going to try to be as prepared as possible. So you've got a lot of wires that plug into the bottom and the side, the top of this thing. So what I like to do is put all of my bolts in here. That way you don't have to try to fish them in with a long like magnet. But be careful not to tip this thing and drop them. So we're going to put this thing in there kind of loose, kind of like this. We're just going to set it in there like that. Now we're going to be able to tip it up and reach underneath here and plug everything in back where it goes. If you have to, you can see that secondary coolant pump that we put in earlier, I saved my screws, and this one goes here, and this one goes there, but I don't want to put that in yet because I want to still be able to lift this up out of the way like this so I can reach in here and plug everything in. You should be able to plug in all the injectors, and there's some other stuff that gets plugged in as well. This little guy that's loose, this will screw into these two screws that I saved here and here. So you just kind of got to make sure everything's plugged in back in its place. Luckily, Volkswagen uses different plugs for every different sensor and stuff, so it really only goes in one way. There's this vacuum line that goes up here and around, so just make sure that everything's plugged in correctly and everything has a home before actually attaching the intake manifold to the head. Also, very important, I've seen people forget these. Don't forget to put those runners back in. Also, don't forget to put your new orange, it's usually orange, intake manifold gasket. Alright, so we got this thing slid into place. Remember that there's the two, I don't know if you can see it, there it is, dowels on both sides that get the nut. So you'll want to just slide it on those and then slide it down into place and give it a push, make sure it's seated. Now, obviously you got to pay attention to make sure you're not pinching anything and all your wires are plugged in. So, it's easy to pinch stuff in this area as well. See, these wires are pretty close. Before you screw these water lines on, or these wires over here, it's a good idea to put I have an extra one, to put this bracket in there. Now, this is the bottom, the one with the bolt. The shorter side goes up. Let me show you what that looks like. The best way to do it is to stick it in through this hole right there, and you can, if you look straight down, you'll be able to see where you're going. There's the where it bolts to the block, and then you can slide it up into the intake manifold. Okay, let's tighten down these intake manifold bolts. Now remember, don't over tighten them. There's only about this much screw going into the aluminum head. You will strip them or break them, so be careful. Alright, our intake manifold is all set. Now, we can put our high pressure fuel line on. This is a 17mm nut. Sometimes it's hard to start. Then we can put all of our more wiring shenanigans, but everything's pretty much laid out where it's supposed to go. You can see that this goes here. This goes here. This ground wire goes where this nut is. This will go here. This goes down behind this, in this wire loop, like this. It gets in this wire loop right here, like that. This magnet gets out of the way. You can put this vacuum line on here. This vacuum line that's coming out of here, the intake manifold, this big long one, goes all the way up and around that and plugs into the back of this one like that. Now there's this stray coolant line that goes into the firewall, this small one, which by the way reminds me, let's go ahead and plug our wires and make sure you have your metal clips in there like that and they're pushed in. Push it in until it clicks. This coolant line, the little one, right, that comes out of here, if it wasn't for the fact that I just broke it, it would have plugged in right there. But now I get to buy a new plastic fitting because it broke on me. So be careful, it's brittle. Then we work our way around. These are all for the spark plugs, or coil packs that is. This plugs into this sensor here. And all of these, which is just the two, get dropped down the hole as far as you can go. If you remember, we unplugged these earlier from underneath. Here we are down below, which is a friendly reminder that we got a bunch of work left to do down here. We got that black one that plugs in right here. Click. And this one that plugs in down here, like that. I want to get this out of the way. It's when we go to put our boost hose in here. We still got to put our crank pulley on as well. But first, I want to finish up the top. So we have some miscellaneous hoses here. So just so if you have a reference to where they go, this little guy with the two ends, like that, lays across here. And these little metal tabs clip onto the cam cradle like this. This will plug in like that. This will clip here and here. We'll worry about that end of it later. Then we've got this fancy guy. This goes here into the CCV, and then this goes right here. Nice satisfying click, and that is done. These are our fuel lines. Probably should have put those on first. There, I took that back off. This lays up here. Okay? So, the silver one goes on the silver one. Just push straight down until it clicks. This one goes on the tan one or the white one or whatever. This one with the green tab, I'm telling you, this stuff's basically labeled, guys. Clicks on there. Then you just lay these, not this one, the one with the curve, the 90 on it. That lays in this channel, like this. Basically right where these marks are is where it clips. And this hooks up to your, this is the oil, or not oil, fuel feed line to your high pressure fuel pump. Don't forget to slide that clamp back on. And this, it comes around, hooks into here. Shall undo this. I think it does. Like this, that. This turns this way, goes in here, and this just slides on there. Once again, don't forget to move this clamp, put it up there. Okay, there's our crank bolt. We have our harmonic balancer or vibration damper, whatever you want to call it. Blah, can't talk. You can see this V right here, or this tooth that's bigger than the rest. That is the keyway. So you want to make sure that it goes on there. It only goes on one way. You don't smash it on there. Now, if you remember when doing the timing, that sprocket is held on. That sprocket's got 3 different chains on it. You've got the balance shaft chains, the camshaft chains, and the oil pump chain, all wrapped around that one sprocket on the crank. The only thing that holds that the sprocket on the crank, is this bolt. So you want to be very careful when removing this. It's actually easier to use an impact because it gets it off very quickly, and with with very little disturbance. So it's like that, and it loosens it up. Now, this is that special tool that I was talking about in the beginning that you want to use to hold it in place. Right there, about 10 o'clock, that's where we want to put this balancer. Now, I'm going to have to use 2 hands to do this, but I'm going to put that balancer on there. You'll feel it where it sits flat, and then push this on there against there, and put that bolt back in by hand all the way until it's tight. Give it a couple ugga-duggas to get it snugged, and then you'll have to get a buddy with a special tool that grabs into these 4 pins, and it gets torqued to some ungodly torque spec. I don't remember what it was. It was like 150 pounds or something stupid. Okay, so coming down here, super easy Volkswagen style. I don't know why people say they suck to work on, but here's the boost hoses. You got your clips in the clipped position, so it's not out, it's in. So you just stick this on there and push. And that, oops, you missed it because you couldn't see, but you just stick it on there and push. Then you come down here, same thing. Line it up, stick it on there, shove. Click. Now, you just take your screw gun and you zip those 2 screws in. I'll start this one by hand. Boom. Done. Let's do the top one. This big long one right here is not as easy, but it's not too hard. It's best to get it up through the bottom. Coming underneath here, you can see there's a big hole, plenty of room. There's your destination. Slide this guy up through there. I'm not going to be able to show you what I'm doing while I'm doing it, but you got to get this all the way up to the top. And then this one will click right into there. We're getting close. Let's put our dipstick in and this little shorty pipe. Remember, this little shorty pipe goes down there. You don't want to leave that rag in there though. That leads directly to the turbo. So I don't know if there's a right side up or upside down on this thing. I think it's the same size either way. This really sucks to put in there, but you got to put that on there. You got to compress the clamp and slide that over there. And then our dipstick goes down through here. It's a little tricky. Got our shorty pipe on. Let's throw this guy on there. Remember that this screw comes in through the back, and this sits behind here, like that. Then this guy plugs into there. Let's get this hooked up, get our oil filter in there, get our coil plugs in. I just threw this intake box, this air filter in here. It's just sitting in there. That way I can plug in this sensor for the map sensor so I know it runs right. I have this battery in here. This is clearly the wrong battery, but it's what I have. So we're gonna go ahead and put this coolant reservoir in here. We're gonna leave it empty for now, just in case some water decides to pump out of these hoses. And then we're gonna leave all these coil packs unplugged, and we're just gonna crank it over a couple times to move oil around, get everything primed, fuel primed, the oil primed, all that good stuff. And then if it sounds good, turn it over. Got compression, got all that good stuff. I'm gonna go ahead and plug these things in here and fire it up for the first time. All right, that sounds really healthy to me. No tinging, no ticking, no noises. Let's, I'm gonna hook these up. This should run. There's gonna be air in the fuel, so let's. Rebuilt cylinder head. Runs perfect. So here we are, project's complete. We got our pink coolant in here, fresh oil change, cylinder head tear down and rebuild. Runs like brand new. This is the whole deal. This project, I can't remember how many hours I spent on it, maybe 40 or 50 in total. I put the interior all back together. I ended up getting some nicer seat covers to go with it. Everything works on this car. The top works flawlessly. The AC works. Everything's ready to go. The transmission shifts. Those DSG shifts are pretty sweet. So this car is all done. I hope you enjoyed watching me tear this thing completely apart and put it all back together. I know this engine really well. If you have any questions, shoot me a comment and I'll try to answer it. That's a wrap for this project. Who knows what we're gonna do next? Maybe some motorcycle stuff. Well, see you on the next one.